Nashville, Noir, Chapter 1. Sydney Belaswe held the final note of her song, allowing it to fade away to a whisper. She raised her guitar, lowered it, and bowed. There was silence in the Kaboot Curve High School auditorium. Then the 100 or so people in the audience burst into applause. Some stood, promoting others to do the same. Bravo! Someone shouted. Brava! Corrected Elise Fickett, who stood by my side. Thank you, Sydney said into the microphone, her face flushed with emotion. Thank you so much. Please sit down. There's something I need to say. The clapping subsided and everyone took their seats. Cindy cleared her throat a few times against the threat of tears. A tall, slender 18-year-old, she looked younger than her age, vulnerable and uncertain despite the accolades she received that evening. She wore a simple patterned brown and white dress with a high collar and a hem that reached her calves. She Her cinnamon-colored hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail. The freckles on her pale face were especially prominent in the harsh glare of the spotlight. She managed to smile and say, "You are the most wonderful people in the world. I don't even know how to begin to thank you for what you're doing for me. I do know that I'll try my very best to justify the faith you're showing in me, and that if I make it big," she paused. "When I make it big," there was a rumble of warm laughter in the audience. "I'll always remember that it was because of you." Now the tears flowed and the applause erupted again. Following the performance, we gathered in a large room adjacent to the auditorium for pastries, coffee, or tea, and soft drinks. I was talking with Kaboot Curve's mayor, Jim Shevlin, when Cindy's mother, Janet, joined us. "I'm circling the room to make sure I don't miss anyone," she said. "How can I ever thank you for what you're doing for Cindy?" "You must be one proud mom," Shevlin said. "Oh, I certainly am," Mrs. Blaskowitz said, beaming. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I'm sorry," she said through her smile. "I'm such a waterworks tonight." "Were you surprised she was chosen?" "Not really. I don't mean to sound immodest, but I knew she made good from the time she was 3, picking out songs from our upright and making me play my old country tapes by Loretta Lynn and Patsy Cline over and over and over again. Even though I love their albums, I thought I'd go mad if I heard them one more time. But look where it's led." Shevlin laughed. "Just make sure we get a copy of her first platinum CD to display in City Hall. You can be sure of that," she said, her joyous smile seemingly permanently affixed on her face. Janet Belasque and her 4 daughters had lived in Kaboot Cove all their lives. They had a tough time making ends meet after Janet's husband died. Gabe Belkowski had been a private pilot who ferried sport fishermen into remote areas of the backwoods between the United States and Canada. His 60-year-old float plane had gone down when the wing tip caught on the stone outcropping as he tried a tricky landing on a lake without a name. The wealthy angler who had offered to double the fee if Balkowski would agree to fly out that windy day had perished as well. Cindy, oldest of the 4 girls, had just been 11 at the time. With little money saved and no life insurance, Balkowski had left the responsibility to care for his family solely on his wife's shoulders. Janet had done an admirable job of raising the girls while holding down two full jobs. Her daughters were well-mannered, intelligent young women with sunny dispositions despite the hardships they endured. Sydney possessed those attributes, but she had also been born with musical talent, loads of it. She played piano and guitar and had a lovely singing voice that was at once lilting and earthy. She won the lead in our high school musical for the past 3 years, and those in attendance never failed to comment on her professionalism, the sort of poise and talent that might one day help her achieve success in show business. She also wrote country and western songs, some of which she performed this evening. Her lyrics were mature for someone so young, speaking to heartbreak and strife, as well as to soaring spirits and overcoming adversity. An impressive musical package. She must be thrilled about going to Nashville, I said. She tries not to show it, said her mother, but I know inside she's bursting with excitement. What you and the others in the CCC have done over the years for young people like Cindy is so wonderful, Jessica. All we've done is to give special youngsters a chance to develop their talents, Janet. I can't imagine a more worthwhile thing to do. CCC stood for Kabukov Cares. When the organization was first established 9 years ago, someone protested the name. It sounds like the work relief program Roosevelt put in before the year. Spencer Dirk had said, "Didn't you ever hear of the Civilian Conservation Corps?" But he was overruled. No one but you remembers the Civilian Conservation Corps, Duke, another had said. And Kabukov Cares began raising money for its mission to financially back one young person each year who's shown considerable talent in one of the arts: painting, dancing, music, writing, or acting. The recipients of the yearly grant used the money to travel to a larger venue where they could receive more advanced professional training, which generally meant New York City or Boston. They were given enough money to live on in those cities for 4 to 6 months and to pay for their lessons. In Cindy's case, Nashville was a logical place for her to put her songwriting and singing talents on display and to learn more about the business of writing and performing music, country and western music. I've been on Kabukov's Cares Committee since its inception and was active in fundraising, donating a percentage of my book royalties each year to the organization. I took immense pride in the accomplishments of those talented young men and women who benefited from it. This year we decided on Sydney Belasquez early on and had done research into Nashville and whether that was where she should go. I had no idea how popular country music was across the US and Canada, nor what a dominant role Nashville played in it. I'd been there once to record one of my books, and again some years later to visit an old friend. Although both visits were brief and details about the city have been regrettably eclipsed in my memory by my involvement with a murder investigation. But that was many years ago. I knew that Nashville was called Music City, and of course I heard of the grand old property, but I was surprised to learn as another committee member airily informed me that Nashville was to country and western music what Hollywood was to the movies. Our research showed that country music sales topped all other genres, outselling pop, urban, contemporary, rap, and jazz by a wide margin. Country radio leads all formats with more than 2,000 radio stations in the United States that program the music, with an estimated audience in excess of 56 million listeners. I admitted to my fellow committee members that country and western music wasn't my cup of tea. My musical taste wanted more to Sinatra and Tony Bennett, Duke Ellington and Benny Goodman, and maybe a good Irish folk song. But once we chosen Sydney, I made a point of listening to her style of music on a local radio station that featured such stars as Garth Brooks, Weber, McIntyre, Brad Paisley, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Shania Swan, and Taylor Swift, and my appreciation of the genre grew. I'm so pleased that Cindy has someone in Nashville who's already impressed with her talents, Janet Bascosby said. You mean that fellow marker? Said Seth Hazlett, who joined our little group. Janet nodded. Roderick Marker was a music executive in Nashville with whom Cindy had struck up a long distance relationship. She'd gotten his name from the directory of Nashville song publishers. His firm was Marker and Whitson, and during her senior year in high school, she had sent him some of her compositions. He responded enthusiastically, telling her that if she ever made her way to Nashville, he would assemble a top-notch band of studio musicians to back her recorded demos and work on her behalf to see that her songs were published and to help advance her performing career. Seth and I had checked him out and he seemed legitimate. Marker and Wilson was listed as having been in business for almost 20 years, and his catalog of published songs was extensive. Cindy told Mr. Marker about her grant from Kabukov Cares and that she'd be coming down to Nashville after graduation, Janet said. He sounds like a nice man, although his secretary is very rude, but he promised to do everything he can to help Sydney along. At least she'll know one person. There was concern, of course, about Sydney traveling alone to an unfamiliar city and being on her own there. Her mother would have liked to accompany her, but with three younger children to care for and two jobs to maintain, she couldn't break away. I understand Susan Shefflin found Cindy a place to stay, I said. Susan, the mayor's wife, was also the town's leading travel agent. Yes, I'm grateful to her. She was in Nashville on business and took the time to scout out possible places for Cindy to live. As far as I'm concerned, she couldn't have found a better one. It's a small apartment building as I understand it, I said. Actually, it's a converted house with 6 rooms to rent, and here's the best part. The building owner, a Mrs. Granger, only wants to rent to girls like Cindy who's come to town to pursue a music career. She told Susan that she'd been a country singer in the Grand Ole Opry herself, although that must have been some time ago. Interesting career move, Seth said. Being a landlady is a far cry from singing at the Opry, but it sounds like a good location for Cindy. Not too overwhelming considering she's coming from a small town. This Mrs. Granger probably never intended to end up a landlady, Janet said. I figure she invested in the building as a stopgap. You know, something to support her in case her career never took off. It turned out to be a lucky choice. Luckily for Cindy anyway, Seth said. I understand that Nashville is fairly safe for a big city, I said. But of course, Cindy will still need to be careful. Oh, she knows that. And Susan says she heard that Mrs. Granger keeps an eye on her tenants. As a mother, that sets my mind at ease. I think it's lovely that she's looking out for these girls. Susan had reported her discovery to Kabukov's Cares Committee, and with Janet's approval, a room with a shared bath had been leased for Sydney's stay, with a promise of extending it should she find work and decide to maintain there. With everything in place, Cindy was scheduled to leave in the week. Jed Richardson, a former airline pilot and old friend of Cindy's father, who operated his own small charter air service in Kabukov, would fly her to Hartford, Connecticut, where she would catch a bus to Tennessee. Jed wasn't charging for the flight. His contribution to a boot curve care and in memory of Cindy's father. Cindy tugged at her mother's sleeve and smiled. Shyly at the rest of us, "Excuse me," she said. Janet turned to her firstborn with a warm smile. "Yes, dear? A couple of the kids want to give me a going away party. Is it okay if I go over to the Carver's house? If you take your sister, Emily is worried she'll never see you again." "That's silly. I'll call or email every day. Besides, it's not like I'm overseas or anything. She can come to the party, but please, not the little ones. I'll take Liz and Mia home. Just make sure you and your sister aren't back too late. We have a lot to do this week before you leave." The prospect of her oldest chick leaving the nest in such a short time must have struck Janet at that moment. Her eyes lingered on Cindy as the young woman gathered her sister and joined her friends. Janet watched as they left for the party, the excited chatter and laughter echoing down the hall. She turned back to us. "I keep telling myself it's such a wonderful opportunity. I know it is. It's her dream to go to Nashville. Every child should be able to follow her dream. But she's not even going and I already miss her. She'll be okay, won't she? She'll be just fine," I said. But later, after Seth had dropped me off at home, I thought about my reassuring words and wondered if I said the right thing. It was natural for a mother to worry about her child leaving home for the first time, moving to a strange city, living alone. It would be a concern for any loving parent. I took that thought to bed and awoke at 2 in the morning with an unfathomable nagging sense of foreboding. "You're being silly, Jessica," I muttered and willed myself back to sleep. The feeling was gone the next morning, but it returned 3 weeks later when I received a call from Cindy's mother. Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye.